Alrighty, so week 16, learn together. So at this point, we've had a couple of weeks of Tkinter. So what I'm going to have you do is do a mock-up. Okay, but before we get into that, just a brief touch of a topic. For your Dev 2, the only requirement I have right now is really just to take your Dev 1 and build a Tkinter graphical user interface for it. And I talked about, I'm recording this early, of course, like I generally do, and I'm in week 13, and I've read some posts from some of you talking about how you might change your concept of what your code is doing, right? So you're completely changing your concept. And if you do that, I just want you to keep this in mind. And again, this is going to sound, not again, but this is going to sound like I'm discouraging you, but I'm not. I'm actually just clarifying so that you understand. Because the requirement here is to take what you did for Dev 1 and build it to Tkinter, that means if you change your topic, you need to still meet these requirements, okay? So just let that sink in for a minute. And I understand, completely understand wanting to do that. I'm just saying, keep that in mind. Talk to me. Come talk to me is my general discussion here. Because if you do, I just want to make sure you're setting yourself up for success for Dev 2. All right. So now for this week, and again, we only have one more Tkinter, right? So week 17. And at this point, I feel like we've learned enough about Tkinter to do some of the basic functionality for what we need, right? We know how to get user input. We know how to do buttons. We know how to respond to those buttons. And what I want you to do is do a basic mock-up. Now, a mock-up in this case doesn't mean it has to be fully functional, but some basic functionality. Like for me, right, because email is required to play the game, I have to have a way to get the email, and then I have to have a way to validate the email, which you don't see in this print screen. And by the way, that's ultimately how I want you to report or to show for this week. But I'll show you my actual working program. I just gave you here an idea of how you can embed it, right? So first, obviously the first thing is you want to create that mock-up of that basic functionality of what your Dev 2 needs to do. And really, how do you go about that? Look at what your Dev 1 needed. Like, what was the inputs you needed? What was the way you responded? And now how do I make that work in the graphical user interface? Okay. So let me just show you. At this point, I'm farther than a mock-up. I'm not at a finished product, but I will show you what I have done. So here's my little app, I call it. You would call it. It's got I use frames in this case because I like that concept. I don't know if I really leaned into the frame enough. I'm sure there's some stuff I could have done. I did and at this point it's just plain nothing like from a usability or from a design standpoint. The UI is not very pretty, but I'm okay with that too because I actually want to get the basic functionality. So in this case, if I hit play, then you do get a message. And the couple things I am going to do is highlight these messages in red, and that way they look different than the leaderboard, right? So you have to give, because I used that same regular expression before. But you, again, think about just your basic inputs, responding to those inputs, right? If I hit play, then I come to the, this looks like a new screen, but it really isn't. All this is I went through and destroyed all the things in the frame that were in the first frame. And the frame is still the same. I'm just destroying the things and then building them back. So in this case, I just use buttons to play the game. I do notice some kind of artifacts that I'm not clearing the field down here, but at least it works, plays. probably the one thing I want to do here is actually output some statistics just about this session or maybe about their overall play or something. I'll have to think about that. And then I gave a quit button, right? So in this case, the quit button actually completely starts them over. Um, but this would be where you could take another print screen, right? Again, you're gonna, this is a week when you get to choose how much mockup and really how much time you want to give this. You need to get some basic functionality and at least get, I would say, at minimum 2 screens, 2 different views, right? Screens is kind of a bad way to think about this, but at least getting whatever input you need and responding to that input in some way, which would require 2 print screens. Okay, now hopefully you all know, I don't know if we've done any print screens, but every operating system has a way to take a print screen. It's better to take one just of the windows, so therefore the images are smaller, and that's what I did. And then what you can do is just place those images. Whoop, let me jump back here. Yes, I did. Oh, I didn't want you. Anyway, so what I did is I created a week 16 directory, and then I put 3 images in there. And then once you push these to GitHub, then you can just grab them, and I'll show you how to do that. But before I show you that, let me just say one other thing about this week, because I actually thought about this. So in addition to the mockup, some minimum functionality for Dev 2, take a print screen of your output and save it into week 16. Ooh, should be public repo. And I put here along with your code, but I'm also putting a little caveat that says if you feel like sharing it would be helpful or something you want to do. Because I did have a discussion with a student about this and his concern about the fact that our course organization is pretty open, and I did a little review, and it's a little more open than I realized today. So, the idea is the only reason I do public and private is so that you can keep things a little between you and I. But regardless, I tend to be a little more open about code, but I know that, I don't have the background from a computer science standpoint that might indicate that you shouldn't. Because honestly, for me, your code reviews are the most important thing for you to do in this class. And so using somebody else's code doesn't help you get there. But anyway, I want to just state this is why I put this here. If you feel it'd be helpful, or I should say if you feel like you want to. So what I want you to do here is just to make it easy for other people to see your output, right? Is instead of just giving links, which I want to give a shout out to Aaron here because he's always great about working and he worked ahead. That was great. He just gave a link to some print screens. So Aaron gets to just do a little more work because he's already working on his dev too. Good for you. That's awesome. So all you have to do is on your reply, come over here, open up one, in this case, my OS, Mac, generates a PNG, but you do want to make that smaller. Use only the size of it. Now you can just say copy image address. Now I'm on Chrome, obviously, here. And then in here, you can just hit embed image, paste that in, right? And then when you hit update, it'll just embed that right into the output. Okay. That's why in this week you need to only put these print screens. Not sure why my alt dev's not working, but these print screens in the public repo, because that's really the only place we can do this kind of sharing. So otherwise we'd get an error when GitHub our Canvas tried to render those pages. Okay, I hope that at least gives you a better example and an idea of what I'm looking for. A minimum of 2 of your screens here. Again, mine's a little further past a mockup because it actually is a working. Mine's kind of a MVP, a minimum viable product. I still have some more work to do, but I feel pretty good about the work that I have done to at least kind of starting to get my head wrapped around the way Tkinter works. Still would say I definitely have a ways to go, but I feel pretty good about my progress so far. Anyway, I hope this helps you, and I'll talk to you soon.